This is a presentation on Math and My Culture, a culturally responsive approach to teaching math. Here is the agenda for this presentation. We will begin with an overview of the presentation. Next, we will talk about what is culture. Next, we will discuss culture and math. Then, we will review some exploration activities. Finally, we will conclude with a wrap-up. Overview. Welcome to the second mentor training. This session will focus on teaching math through a cultural lens and how this can be helpful for students. The outcomes for this presentation are to 1. Know the basic concepts of culturally responsive teaching. 2. Understand how a culturally responsive approach can be applied to learning math in and outside of the classroom. And 3. Recognize the importance of connecting culture to math. The next part of this presentation will discuss what is culture. Questions to consider. Some questions to ponder before we begin are: what does culture mean? What are some examples of culture? What cultures do I belong to or participate in? What are some examples of how different cultures use math? Take a few minutes to think about these questions and write down your answers. Culture is an integrated pattern of human behavior that includes thoughts, communications, languages, practices, beliefs, values, customs, courtesies, rituals, manners of interacting, and roles, relationships, and expected behaviors of a racial, ethnic, religious, or social group, and the ability to transmit the above to succeeding generations. This definition describes all that culture encompasses. Hopefully, it covers many of the definitions that you thought of. Examples from Native Hawaiian culture include: Native Hawaiians spoke different dialects of Hawaiian based on where they lived. If you listen to someone from Ni'ihau speak Hawaiian, their language is different than the Hawaiian used by other speakers of Hawaiian. Native Hawaiians believed in many gods. The four major gods, Ku, Lono, Kane, and Kanaloa, other gods and demigods such as Pele, Kamapua'a, Maui, and family or personal gods called Aumakua, which people believed often took the form of animals, such as sharks or different types of birds. Native Hawaiians practiced the kapu system, which were their laws and codes of conduct. For example, men and women did not eat meals together. You were not allowed to contaminate the fresh water, and there was no fighting or war during the makahiki season. An essential part of this definition of culture to point out is that culture is transmitted to succeeding generations, meaning that it exists among a people over an extended period of time. It is something that is passed on. Something to ponder. Why is the ability of being transmitted an important aspect to what we understand as culture? Culture distinguishes and unites. Culture is often portrayed as the beliefs and/or behaviors people retain despite interaction with other cultures, that distinguish them from others and at the same time offer them a sense of shared meaning. Culture also serves different functions. Defining a culture or defining a people by a culture distinguishes people of different cultures from each other and unites people of the same culture into a shared identity. Culture distinguishes groups of people, whether it be by race, ethnicity, or religion, which are usually what most people think of when distinguishing cultures, but can even distinguish groups of people based on age, gender, school, hobbies, job or career, sports, and so much more. Culture also unites people within the culture together. For example, people may attend annual cultural festivals and competitions where people of that culture share food, art, and entertainment from that culture. Take some time to think more about what different cultures you belong to or participate in. People can belong to several cultures. For example, someone could be a Hawaiian, American, a teenager, a volleyball player, and be part of Spanish club. Culture is fluid. Culture can also be defined as components of belief systems and behaviors that have remained stable, but that indigenous peoples have adapted and adjusted throughout time, both for their survival and because they are, like all humans, groups of people who create and transmit culture. One characteristic of culture is that it is fluid. Although there are parts that remain, the culture is also constantly changing in order to survive and because culture depends on people to perpetuate it. While some things stay the same, all cultures change over time. For example, while the Hawaiians followed the kapu system for centuries, it was abolished after the death of Kamehameha I. Changes in culture depend on the people in the cultural group and how they interact with people from other cultures. If people within a culture do not like a part of their culture, it is less likely that they will embrace and perpetuate it compared to other parts of their culture that they do like. In many cultures, the form of government has shifted tremendously over time, while still keeping some traditional methods. Many countries that were once ruled by monarchies or chiefdoms now have other and or additional forms of governing. In the next part of this presentation, we will discuss culture and math. Culture and math. What does culture have to do with learning math? What cultures come to mind when you think of math? Take a moment to consider. Usually, people will name European cultures because many famous mathematicians were from Europe. In Hawaii, people may say Asian cultures because Asians are stereotypically good at doing math. Did anyone think of our indigenous cultures? Why or why not? Math is a part of all cultures. It is important that we help our students know that one culture does not have ownership of math, and that people everywhere use math and have used math long before it was taught in schools. Here are some examples to illustrate math in different cultures throughout the world. The ancient Hawaiians used rates with their irrigation system so that they diverted just enough water from the stream into their lo'ikalo, or taro patches, for the lo'i to stay muddy, but not too much water, which would dry up the rest of the stream. Many other cultures, including the Egyptians, Chinese, and Persians, also developed sophisticated irrigation systems that involved using math. Egyptians used geometry in construction of the pyramids. Scientists are still unsure of how the pyramids were constructed so exact without the use of modern tools. Math is and was used in building other structures too, like bridges, buildings, and statues. People all around the world use math when cooking or preparing food. We use math to measure ingredients. For example, we measure or estimate how much salt to use based on the size of the meal being prepared. We also calculate how much time is needed to prepare the meal. Different cultures developed their own numeral systems, such as the Roman numeral system. For our students, understanding that people from their own culture were excellent mathematicians can inspire them to follow in that example. It gives them something to be proud of, that people in their culture with whom they share a cultural identity were intelligent and successful. Cultural mismatch. Far too often, conventional math pedagogy persuades students from historically marginalized communities to consider school mathematics as a subject divorced from their personal and cultural experiences, and consequently leads these students to perform poorly in math classes and internalize negative self-images about their knowledge and ability in mathematics. Many minority students develop negative self-images of themselves. They may think they are dumb, stupid, can't do math, etc., because they are learning math in ways and using materials that are made by people from other cultures for people from other cultures. In essence, they are learning abstract concepts in abstract ways. That doesn't mean that the students can't do math, just that there may be ways to teach math that are more culturally sensitive or specific. Culturally relevant teaching. Culturally relevant teachers know when to introduce relevant examples from their students' backgrounds and experiences to make learning more meaningful. Describe what is happening in this picture. Notice that the students are not sitting in desks looking at the whiteboard or at a textbook. They are gathered around the teacher who is involving them in some kind of hands-on activity using manipulatives. How does this compare to how you remember math class to be? One of the theoretical frameworks our project works with is culturally relevant teaching. What do you think meaningful means in this quote? The content that is taught is more meaningful when the students can know that there is a direct and practical application to their lives. In other words, they can understand why they are learning something and not just learning because that's what they are supposed to do. Teaching and cultural norms. Hawaiian cultural example: learning through one's relationships with others in society. Native Hawaiian education. Prior to the arrival of the missionaries in Hawaii, education for Native Hawaiians reflected the needs and functions of its people. Before Western pedagogy came to Hawaii, learning did not happen in a classroom. It happened in the people's daily lives. We will talk about this more in a few slides. Connecting Hawaiian education with Hawaiian values. Hawaiian values were socially and community situated and reflected the individual's relation to others. In Hawaii, as may be the case in many other cultures, cultural values are socially situated, meaning they reflect the individual's relationship to other people in the culture. For examples, please see the next slide. Here are examples of some Hawaiian values. Aloha means love, affection, compassion, kindness, charity. Imina'oao means to seek enlightenment, wisdom, education. Malama means to care for, to protect, to maintain. Kuleana means responsibility, privilege. Lokahi means collaboration, cooperation. Laulima means cooperation, group of people working together. Ohana means family. As previously mentioned, Hawaiian values are socially situated. For example, aloha means to love others. Imina'oao is to seek wisdom, wisdom obtained from others who have that wisdom. Malama means to take care of others or of things that belong to the community. Lokahi and laulima mean to work with others. Connecting Hawaiian education with Hawaiian values. Hawaiian students are more groups-oriented as opposed to individualistic. By contrast, the American culture encourages independences, autonomy, and competition. Students in Hawaii today may prefer to work with others as opposed to working alone, because in the Hawaiian culture, collectivism is emphasized over individualism. The cultural values mentioned in the previous slide demonstrate that Hawaiians are oriented to working with others in a community rather than working alone. Hawaiian methodology is skill-based, practical, and place-based. Native Hawaiian children observed and learned from the elders who included their older siblings and adults who were masters in their occupations in an informal manner. As previously mentioned, the Native Hawaiians did not teach in a classroom. What the younger generation learned from their elders was practical. To learn about cultivating kalo, they did not read about it, they did it. To learn about fishing, they did not Google it, they did it. They watched and did. We can apply this method to our classrooms today as a culturally relevant way of teaching content. In the next part of this presentation, we will explore cultural activities that involve math. Examples of math in Hawaiian culture include building a community, such as landscaping, construction, and architecture. Feeding a community, such as with farming, resource management, irrigation, weather, seasonal and lunar patterns, and fishing. Voyaging and navigating, such as with engineering and astronomy. In order to accomplish these things, Hawaiians needed to use math. Examples of math in local Hawaii culture. Explore the following slides to view examples of incorporating local culture into math. Making something culturally relevant can be as easy as changing the names of the people and places in word problems to be something that the students are more familiar with. Ni'ihau Shell Lei. The island of Ni'ihau is the oldest of the 8 main Hawaiian islands and is located northwest of the island of Kauai. Ni'ihau is a privately owned island with a population of about 70 residents. Many residents of Ni'ihau make special lei or necklaces from the tiny shells they collect on the beaches there. It may take several months to over a year to make these lei. Because the lei are so difficult to make, they are rare and very expensive. By law, in order to be considered an authentic Ni'ihau shell lei, at least 80% of the shells used to make the lei need to come from Ni'ihau. Ni'ihau shell lei are also symmetrical, so there is usually a repeated pattern. Students in previous projects learned about ratios and percentages needed to create Ni'ihau shell lei, special lei made in the secluded island of Ni'ihau. Watch a video about how our students learned about and used ratios and percentages to make beaded keychains and bracelets. Learn more about the lesson at the links provided on the slide. Learn more about some traditional Hawaiian games and how they involved math. Lulu is a dice counting game. Pala'ie is a ball and hoop game. Visit the link to see how students connected displacement of a canoe to preparing and rationing supplies for a 30-day canoe voyage. We'll conclude this presentation with a wrap-up. Thank you for viewing this presentation on culturally responsive teaching. Our next presentation will be on blended learning, what to do when kids are glued to their iPads, incorporating technology in math instruction.